Welcome back to the Gaming Co-op. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different than usual, pertaining to some battle reports. I was fortunate enough in the last week to be able to play two games, one at 1,000 points versus a Khorn Berserker army, and the other was a 1,500 points game versus the Death Guard. The first game against the Khorn Berserkers actually didn't go out too well. I ended up losing the game, so that put me with great concern, being my first outing with my fast boys. So I put together another Megatrack Scrapjet, proceeded to break him. So that sucked, but what can you do? On to continuing the project. Slapped him back together, slapped some paint back onto what I damaged, and here he is. This was the day of the 1,500 point game, which was the culminating event for this week. All the games were played at Critical Hit Gaming Lounge in Oshawa. Thanks to those guys for having tables ready to go. So here's a deeper look into the list. It was a Deffskullz detachment, a Outrider because I capitalized on having a ton of fast moving units. I still feel like that Deffskullz are the #1 way to go because that 6-up invuln is just too beneficial and making all your infantry obsec is crazy. So our Warlord was a Deffkill Wartrike. He was taking Might is Right for his Warlord trait, which allows him to have an additional attack and bumps him up to Strength 8. And then we had a ton of fast attack slots. We also have a Weird Boy. He's taking the Relic, the Scorched Gip Bones, to give him +1 to casting, in case I want to use Psychic secondaries. Furthermore, he was taking the Warphead stratagem to make him able to cast 2. Specifically, he knew Maniacal Seizures to make things a little bit more squishy against shooting and close combat, and also Fists of Gork and Mork, which didn't come up in our games. So for elites, we had 2 squads of commandos, both with power claws and tank buster bombs, a squad of 12 Gretchen, 10 boys with a power claw inside of a truck. For fast attack, we have a squad of war bikers with a knob with power claw and choppa. These guys did really good as they had their 14-inch move, shot up the board, contested an objective, and actually resulted in the Plague Marines having to pull away and go after them rather than continue on their advance into my ranks. So all the buggies came in squads of 2. We had the Boomdax Nazwagons, the Custom Boosted Blastas, the Megatrack Scrapjets, and the Shock Jump Dragsters. As far as custom jobs go, I spent 2 CPs giving Gork's Roar to the Deffkill Wartrike and Gyroscopic Whirligigs to the Shock Jump Dragsters. Gork's Roar was really good. It allowed the Deffkill Wartrike to kind of stay safe turn 1 and 2 and still be able to touch other units on the table and just kind of be a little bit of a threat. Just having flat 6 shots at AP-1, strength 5 is pretty solid. The Gyroscopic Whirligig was really good for threatening my opponent's vehicles turn 1. They did their job. They teleported up. They distraction, Carnifexed hard in the backfield, threatened an objective, and that was pretty much what they needed to do for the day, and it worked out really well. So it was listed very well, playing aggressively on turn 1, going out and touching as many objectives as I could, and really pushing the point that I was going to be all over the board the entire game, and engage on all fronts. There wasn't one turn where I didn't achieve it.
It now belongs to the Orks!
Personally, I felt this was a good litmus test of the units that I've chosen, because Death Guard have an innate reduction of damage, so all my damage 3 from all my rockets and damage d6 was reduced by 1. Furthermore, fighting against a really aggressive and board controlling army that has a lot of auras and abilities that can shut down soft units like buggies made this a very good matchup to see how these units operate in a stressed environment. As this was a good introduction game, we decided to do pillars from the big rulebook and avoid the GT pack, just so that way everything was kind of more easier to get a grips with and learn faster. So, knowing that, I decided my secondaries. I chose Mental Interrogation, Engage on All Fronts, and Assassinate. So I was really looking to target the characters based off the Death Guard army. There was a lot of characters to choose from, which was pretty good, and being able to be so mobile allowed me to get around the board very quickly. Mental Interrogation, once again, a lot of characters, and I knew Death Guard would be playing aggressively, so that they'd want to be in my face. And I thought, hey, it's an easy 4+ to cast with Scorched Gip Bones, makes it a 3. Until we get more secondaries from our own codex or some of the ones from the GT packet, the selection from the big rulebook isn't exactly optimal for a speed freak list. My opponent, the Death Guard player, took Attrition, Engage on All Fronts, and what we think is called Spread the Disease or potentially Spread the Sickness. It's the one where the Death Guard infantry models, including characters, can do an action in a turn in which they puke or like get their guts or whatever all over an objective for 3 points. The list itself consisted of 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, 2 with Plague Spitters, 1 with Entropy Cannons. His Warlord was the Demon Prince, as you can see on the left-hand side there. He had a whole host of Death Guard characters, absolutely bringing back that old feel of Hero Hammer. He had the Plague Caster and the Tallyman, who got him a couple of CPs. For infantry, there was 18 Poxwalkers and 8 Plague Marines. The 8 Plague Marines were in one big squad with a plethora of close combat weapons that absolutely eviscerated my bikers.
Poor little feller.
Those guys were riding around inside the Rhino there. Later on in the game, he deep struck in that new Plague Marine character with the Spitter and the Power Fist. So the game started in turn 1 with Orks going first. I sent the Shock Jump Dragsters up the board and moved up kind of my screen of lighter buggies, and my troop transport got on as many objectives as I could. Tried to dish out a little bit of damage onto a couple of the Plague Burst Crawlers, but not much happened. My opponent took an early lead, puking on an objective, getting 2 points for Engage and 4 for War of Attrition. As part of that, I lost both the Shock Jump Dragsters. I maybe should have used Temperamental Whirligig to redeploy one after they did their shooting, but I thought Engage on all fronts was more important at that time. So turn 2 came around, the Orks took a lead here. This is when I was able to score more on primaries because once again I kept forcing objectives and blowing them off of ones that I could actually affect them on. I scored 2 assassinate points that phase, killing the Demon Prince as it was really aggressive in my lines, as well as also the Tallyman who was on the back due to some deep striking commandos. On the other side of the table, the War Bikers, doing what they did, distracted my opponent a little bit by going up and contesting an objective and threatening some of the Plague Burst Crawlers. Turn 3 saw a large swing in points as I was able to pick up 5 more in my secondaries, while my opponent wasn't able to puke on any more objectives or kill enough units for War of Attrition. He was 1 kill away, so that was a really clutch turn. Coming on to turn 4, the Poxwalkers advanced up the flank there, capturing that objective and killing off the remainder of the boys. They also got stuck in with the Deffskull Wartrike. It became a bit of a war of attrition there. The Plague Burst Crawler died, the Deffskull died, and then the Megatrack Scrapjets went in and cleaned up the remaining Poxwalkers at the end of that turn. This was definitely the final nail in the coffin though for the Death Guard, as I was able to score 10 on the primary and prevented him from getting any on the primary. He received 3 points at the end of turn 4 for Engage on all fronts, and we just kind of discussed what would happen in the preceding turns. He conceded. So the final score for the game was 41-26. I feel one of the turning points in the matchup was when the Plague Marines had to go over and finish off the War Bikers. It just kind of prevented them from getting back into the combat for the rest of the game. Now I do have to say the Death Guard are really hard to kill and they can put out a ton of damage from range, so it's an interesting combination. Going up against those contagions was really cool, having my units lose toughness, having to try and cope with that. And DeathSkullz and most Orc armies, actually every army in 8th really relied on rerolling hits and wounds, so having the ability to shut that down with the Demon Prince was really interesting. I think if the game had kept going, the Death Guard would have probably tabled me. The buggies are just so soft that whenever a Plague Burst Crawler looked at one, it pretty much just died constantly. I was down to 2 of them. I had 5 Gretchen and I think 3 or 4 commandos left. So I think if he dedicated certain units to certain portions of the table at the end of the game, that he would have absolutely tabled me. The only issue being I don't think there was enough time for him to recoup the points that I'd gained on him. So at this point, I'd like to nominate my MVP for the battle, which was 100% my Boomdaka Snazwagons. I'm going to actually be dropping the 2 custom boosted Blastas and picking up 1 more to make it a squad of 3. I think their strength 5, AP-2, damage 1, 9 shots is really effective at clearing out light infantry, and with Death Guard being able to reduce all incoming damage by 1, it just makes it so high strength, high AP, damage 1 weapons are necessary. And yeah, so that's why I'm going to nominate them for being my MVP for the battle. The Plague Burst Crawlers were absolutely brutal to go up against. Those things are just crawling death. So I think, I didn't ask him, but I feel like that was probably his pick. The Commandos have to be given a honorable mention because during the game, they were constantly taking objectives. They killed a character and also a Plague Burst Crawler. And that's it. If you like what we're doing here on the channel, hit like and subscribe. Follow along with all of our social media.